Wow, look at all the people. Welcome, welcome everybody. Well, I am going to go ahead and get started. Holy cow, we still have tons of people popping in the waiting room here and getting dialed in. Super, super excited for you all to be joining us tonight. You all must have got the email. You must have got the note that we have a very special guest speaker tonight. And we do. And I am very excited to get out of the way tonight and let Dr. Rob share some things with you. But first of all, my name's Dave Pitcock. I am one of the co-founders of Frequence, and I'll tell you what, I I've been in this industry 30 years. I'm 54 years old. I've been in this industry over half of my life. And when I say this industry, I'm talking about an industry that likes to help people, an industry that likes to help people feel good right now, whatever that means for you. For some people, it's monetary. For some people, it's health wise. For some people, it's spiritual and thinking wise. I don't care what it is for you. That is why we started Frequence. We've been in this industry. Had the privilege to be with companies that had some of the most amazing products on the planet, and still do. And I've always been an advocate of good nutrition and feeling good. You all know what it feels like to feel good, and you also know what it feels like to not. You know what it feels like to be happy, and you know what it feels like to be sad. And this month being Mental Awareness Month, and there are a lot of that has been brought to the forefront of people talking about their real feelings. And what I think as human beings, like as a human being, you should wake up grateful every day, feel amazing, serve the world, be an incredible human being, and start again tomorrow. And I guess my question is this: how many of you really feel that way? How many of you wake up every day and feel that way? And not to get into lots of stories, but man, it's been almost a year ago that we sat down with a product formulator after many things happened in our own family on personal levels with our experience in the industry and with great nutritional products and great personal development. What can we do to help people feel good right now? And that was really the preface of how Frequence started. And we went down a lot of different places, but when it comes down to it, I guess my real question is, have you heard of frequency on nutrition? And that is exactly what Frequency is about, and that's what you're going to hear about tonight. So I am not with Dr. Rob on here for Dave Pitcock to try to even make sense of that. Not even a cool thing. But I will say this. I want you guys to think of the word serendipity, because there's times in your life where you can look back. Sometimes you know it right when it happens. But how many of you had times in your life where you look back and you go, that's why. That's why I met this person. That's why I met this person. That's why my car broke down right there. I remember fishing one time. My son brought this up to me today as a memory. And he said, Dad, do you remember when my dad, myself, a friend, and my son were fishing one morning very early? And we unloaded the boat. We got partway across the lake and we heard this crazy screaming. And we're looking and we're in the middle of a lake. Like, this is the weirdest sound we've ever heard. We looked as far as we could across the lake, and there were four people waving their arms. Their boat had sunk the night before. It was cold, and they had been out on the bank all night cold with their boat underwater. And we pulled up, picked them up. They were massively grateful. We got them back. Everything was good. And when it's funny, when Chance and I were talking about that today, the word serendipity popped into my head. He's like, what do you think about that? I was like, you know what? We were at the right place at the right time. And many of you have been there at the right place at the right time in your life before. And I feel that way right now. I felt that way when we launched the Frequence Rise, when we launched the nootropics. We beta tested it back in November, and we had literally thousands of people give testimonies that I feel better. My brain is lit up. I feel normal. I feel like I want to get off the couch. I want to move forward. I want to take a step. I'm nice to people. We had all these testimonies, and we knew we had something really special. But I am not a doctor. I'm not a product formulator. I'm a person, and I like to feel good. And I know what it likes when I know what I feel like when I'm not right. And I've been down that road and I've been down those rabbit holes, and I don't want to go there. I want to feel good all the time. And you know what? When you do, as a human being, you want to share that by nature. our nature is to share and be really good human beings. And that is what frequency is about. So tonight, what I want to do, we had that serendipity moment. I met a friend who met a friend, introduced us to Dr. DeMartino, and we had Dr. Rob, we had you come and speak at one of our events. We talked a little bit before. I'm not real sure you knew what you were getting yourself into. I still don't think you know what you got yourself into because you didn't get to eat for like 24 hours. You were overwhelmed and bombarded by people, but it is because you are one of the most realist human beings on the planet. And the statement still sticks with me today that we talked on our very first Zoom we ever did was that you know the power of this stuff, but to take it and wrap it up and put it in a way that is layman terms where the whole world can hear it, that still sticks with me today. And to me, it just feels like it's more than a passion, it's a mission. And I just feel like we've got this little army built that wants to go share this. So for you to pop on here tonight, we have lots of friends, lots of guests. I am excited. I'm excited to hear your thoughts on Frequency and what's going on. I know you're one of the busiest men on the planet too. So first of all, thank you for joining us. But please, please, please take it away.
No, thank you for having me. Jeez. Yeah, it's funny. I literally just got done with practice. I literally just got done seeing patients, and I ran in here and I said, "You have the Zoom link," and wanted to throw it up. But I think you guys are actually pretty good for my mental health because I look at all these comments and all the comments I get from you guys. It's so heartwarming that it's so well received because I've been talking this frequency message for 25 years now. And it's met with different receptions. The idea of frequency is an innate concept that has become foreign to us just because we've become disconnected from that. And we've gone into more of this chemical model and we've moved away from this frequency-based model. And it's exciting to see, it coming back into the mainstream because I've had it in the medical world for a long time and we've used it to get lots of patients better, thankfully. I'm always humbled by that it works so well, but it's something that you're bringing to the masses. And I'm happy to help you with that ideology and with that mission. And when you guys asked me to talk about mental health, when we were at the conference and I was getting bombarded by questions, which of course I love, and I was very welcoming of, one question I got a lot was, this concept of mental health and how it plays a role in not feeling well. And people kept asking me, like, I got sick after a stressful event, or I got sick after a trauma, or I got sick. And I will tell you, I've taught these concepts to doctors for a decade, over a decade now. 12 years I've been teaching this clinically to doctors of what to do. And I will tell them every single time, I can teach you the physiology. I can teach you what happens in the body. I can keep you the structure. I can tell you all these things. What I cannot prepare you for is that I promise you there will be emotional stuff, emotional trauma, stress patterns that will be in these patients who get these kind of chronic illnesses that we typically deal with in the clinic. It's always underlying. I mean, I'm sure it's not always, but it's going to be the 99 percentile that it's almost always there. But it doesn't have to be in only these chronic illnesses, right? This is a difficult topic to talk about because it certainly exists on a big continuum, right? You've got the people who say, I just don't feel that same get up and go like I used to have. I feel a little bit more down, right? I just don't have that same pep in my step versus all the way down the line to really clinical depression, clinical anxieties, schizophrenias, major bipolar, major diagnosable disorders. But it's literally a continuum and it exists all on the same pathway. And when we talk about it, it's still same causation, but it's getting really confused because we're confusing a chemical model, which we're trying to wedge these emotional issues into a chemical model, right? If you've heard the term, you have a chemical imbalance, which is, I hate that term. I hate it because it's wrong, it's stigmatized, it's bad, and it's not what it is. And we're going to talk about why the case that is. But really, these are energetic style problems. So if you've never heard me talk before, I got tons of videos out there, but my concept in clinic is very, very simple. Most chronic illnesses are caused by this idea that we coined called energetic debt. Energetic debt means that your body has to make a certain amount of energy and it has to expend a certain amount of energy to do everything that it needs to do. And the goal is that you make more energy than you expend. This is no different than finances, right? You make a certain amount of money from your job. You have to spend a certain amount of money on your mortgage and your car and your insurances and all those different things like that. But hopefully you make more money than you spend. Hopefully in your body, you make more energy than you expend. And if you don't, you end up in this style of energetic debt. And that is the foundational principle that will occur in at least 80% of chronic diseases. And we can prove this scientifically. The research is very clear about that. But in an energetic debt model paradigm, we talk about the idea that you have to make a certain amount of energy, but your body will expend energy. Now, people can end up in debt. It's the same thing like business. You can end up in debt in lots of different ways. You may not make enough. You may overspend, right? There may be somebody in your business that's stealing from you, right? There could be all kinds of different reasons. And we'll talk about things like, well, people could have infections or they could have toxicity. These things can cause a lot of energy to be expended. But the one thing we never really give credence to is how much energy gets expended by unresolved emotional trauma and emotional stressors that happen to us, right? You know, even the government gets in on this and says, well, stress plays a role in almost every chronic disease. Yeah, they say that, but they don't exactly tell you what that means, right? Stress is important and it's a huge part of it. But these things, emotional upset is a huge energy stealer. It steals energy from our systems. And I'll give you the perfect example. You can have a 10-hour workday where you work your fingers to the bone, you kill yourself, you work really, really super hard. Maybe it's even really physical. Or you could have a 10-minute argument with someone. And at the end of it, which one are you more tired after? The 10-minute argument will typically tire you out significantly more than the huge amount of physical stress that somebody could go into. That is so powerful when we look at this because we don't really think of it that way. Think about how much that pulls out of your system. And that's just in the moment. Now, natural healthcare has talked about this for a really, really long time. But we know emotional trauma will get stored in the human body. In fact, if you want to look into this, I'll give you even more depth. There was a German doctor, his last name was Hamer, and he was really sure that emotion predated a lot of illnesses. And the reason he said that was because he was a doctor, he was a healthy guy, he had just had all this stuff tested out, all of his health markers, and he was good. And then his son died in a car accident, a motorcycle accident, I believe it was. His son tragically died. And within a week, he got a cancer diagnosis. The father got a cancer diagnosis. And he was 100% convinced it came from that. He spent his entire life figuring out, based on your gender, based on what dominant hand you use, which basically is what dominant side of the brain you are, they can trace this back and say, this emotional trauma will lead to this disease. It affects this part of the brain. It moves here. The chart, again, I'm old and I've been doing this for a minute now. The chart would fill the wall behind me. It was huge. The problem that we ran into was even though we had this all laid out, and now it's all on computer, but now even though we had this all laid out, when we found the emotional trauma, when we got to it, we said, okay, what do you do about this? Because we know this is what's causing it, to the point that we had pre and post MRIs, functional MRIs on the brain, and you could see the traumatic difference. Getting a diagnosis is traumatic. Getting a diagnosis, what they would do is they would actually take functional MRIs of somebody's brain. This person would already be sick. Say they would have, God forbid, cancer or something like that. Then they would tell them they have this disease. Then they would MRI their brain again, and their brain looks completely different. Because the diagnosis of something is trauma. So they would map all this out. But then when it got to the end point, say, okay, now we know all these things. What do we do about it? And then the answer was, well, you just have them kind of talk it out a little. It wasn't a great response to, we knew this to this level, but what do we ultimately do about it? Now you have to understand, the human stress response, they discovered it and they did the studies on it in the 60s, has not changed. Okay. We do stress testing. We do neurological testing on everybody that looks at how their body responds to stress on a subconscious style level. And I could tell you all kinds of cool things about that testing. But what I can't tell you is if you handed me two of those tests and said one of these people was in a life-threatening situation and the other person drank way too much coffee and had a work deadline that they were going to miss, which one is which? I couldn't tell you. Because the human stress response is built for life or death. We are built for simpler times. We are built for hunter-gatherer. And most of the time, our stress was, hey, we're getting chased by a large animal. But it's a zero-sum game. Either you're going to get eaten or you're going to live to fight another day. And the stress ends either way. But this is why a lot of times people come to me and say, Doc, I don't know why this is bothering me so much. I've dealt with way worse things in my life. And I'm sure you have. But you have to understand, the human body, the fight or flight response of your nervous system does not care. It looks at all of these stressors the same exact way as if you're in a life-threatening situation or, oh my God, traffic is really bad in Las Vegas and I'm going to be late to my meeting. The response is the same. Really, what it comes down to now is we're not built for this level of stress. We're built for an alarm and we're built for it to shut off. And then we go about our daily routine. This is constant alarm. Most people wake up under stress, they live their day under stress, and then they go to sleep under stress as well. So at the end of this, I want to give you some functional things that you can do right now, starting right now. Obviously, if you're here and you're dealing with frequency and you're hopefully taking the products, that's a great starting point. But we want to start to give you some ideologies around what you can do with it, but this bigger picture of what you're involved with right now and what that actually potentially means, not just to you and your health, but to the masses, right? What you can really do about it. So think of unresolved emotional stressors and traumas, basically like an electromagnetic pattern that imprints itself on your body. Okay. This is no different than when we do EEGs on somebody's brain, we are looking at their brainwaves. Right? We are looking at the frequency of how their brain fires. A calm brain fires with certain frequencies. A stressed brain fires with other frequencies. A brain that's at sleep fires with a completely different set of frequencies, right? And it's basically all about speed. Now, if we did this test on somebody when they're sleeping, it's going to look a certain way. If we gave them a really hard puzzle to do and we did this test, yeah, their brainwave activity is going to get more because they're in problem-solving mode. But I will tell you, for the majority of people that we test out, depending upon what's wrong with them, they are rarely ever in that calm balance where their brain says, I'm awake, I'm aware, but I'm calm. That almost never really occurs. So these emotional traumas that we all experience, and I promise you, they don't have to be huge. They could be small things that happen to us in formative times that we just eventually take as fact, but they imprint as patterns on our nervous system. And our nervous system tends to react that way because it has great memory. And it says, hey, if we were ever in this stressful situation, this is how we should. Okay. So what I always like to talk about with patients is think about it from this way, from an analogy perspective. This is the Control-Alt-Delete necessary of your body. So if you have a computer, you're working on it, it's starting to run slow, it's dragging, you're clicking, and if you're like me, you click, and if it doesn't work, then you double click again, and then you click 7 times until you get that blue screen of death, right, where your computer just completely freezes out. That's how I roll. But if I see a lot of LOLs in the chat, so I'm assuming I'm not alone in this, which makes me feel a little bit better. But if you do the Control-Alt-Delete and you get that little taskbar that comes up, you'll see not responding, not responding, not responding. Programs that are not responding. These are programs that are opened up in your computer. Now, you have no idea that they're running, but they're running behind the scenes. They're running in your human body as the subconscious. And your subconscious is going over it and over it and over it again, trying to rectify these emotional traumas. And it basically steals all your RAM and it makes your computer run really slow and it makes it crash. That's exactly what's happening. And what we want to be able to do and what we're capable of doing now is hitting that Control-Alt-Delete button in the human body and going in there and end task, end task, end task, and deleting those emotional patterns from running in the background and stealing all your RAM. Now, we have the technology to be able to measure all that. We have the technology to be able to look at that. But I will tell you, that is all based on frequency, not chemistry. This idea of chemical imbalance, I talked about it a little bit earlier. The idea of a chemical imbalance is incorrect because, and this will probably be the 6 minutes and 6:22 when we're doing this now. So we're 22 minutes into the webinar. Mark this down. This is going to be your moment, right? Chemicals only imbalance when the frequencies that govern them are incorrect. Okay? Chemicals only imbalance when the frequencies that govern them are incorrect. And I can tell you that this is correct because think of serotonin, right? Most people may have heard of serotonin. Serotonin is your neurotransmitter. It's your feel-good hormone. It's when most people get diagnosed and given an antidepressant, this is what they take, right? They'll take something to help them with serotonin. And interestingly, serotonin is activated in the human body by only certain frequencies of light. We know it. There's certain frequencies of UV light that activate the way serotonin works in the human body. You could have all the serotonin in the world in your body. If you don't activate it with frequency, it will do nothing for you. Right? So this idea of a chemical imbalance can be really misleading because we always think, oh, we have these high levels or we have these different types of things. It's not that. Okay, it's a matter of fact of whether or not they work. So imagine that I had two different glass jars and I had chemicals in each. Now, if you mix them together, they could create all kinds of chemical reactions. You see those fun videos on Facebook, right, where they fizz up or they could create an explosion. It could create all kinds of things. But if they stay in those two jars and there's no physical catalyst or reaction of me mixing them together, they're inert. They do nothing. They just sit there completely useless in the two jars. All chemistry has to have a frequency reaction to it in order to make it work. So the idea that somebody can purely have a chemical imbalance without frequency being involved is a misnomer in science. Now, we've gotten in bed with this chemical imbalance model because that's what we can do with, well, because we have pharmaceuticals for that. Right? We can alter someone's chemistry, better health, better mental health through better chemistry. But unfortunately, that model is failing. That model is failing pretty violently at this point because when you look at the diagnosis statistics in the United States, 1 in 9 people get diagnosed with PTSD. 1 in 9 get diagnosed. Everyone probably has some form of PTSD living in this world one way versus the other. But 1 in 9 people actually carry a diagnosis of PTSD. It's so many people that it would literally fill the population state of Texas. Now, if you've ever looked at a map, Texas is quite large, right? It is a huge amount of people. And unfortunately, most of the people who get diagnosed with that are females. Right, the diagnosis for PTSD is significantly higher in females. So why does that happen, right? I see the question popping up in charts going, well, how do you get that? Like, how does your frequency get altered? How does your frequency get screwed up? How does your frequency screw up like this? So in PTSD, there's literally 3 parts of your brain that involve. You see something, PTSD is always triggered by fear. It's not triggered by any other emotion. It's always triggered by fear. Okay, so it says, oh my gosh, there's a tiger over there and he's going to get me. Right? That part of your brain is designed for fear to keep you literally alive. And your brain's always on. I think this is a weird thing. Like people think like your brain shuts off. Your brain never shuts off. Your brain is always 100 miles an hour, but there's other parts of your brain that will talk it off the ledge and tell it to calm down. So it's inhibited by other parts of your brain. So that part says, oh my God, tiger, we're going to die. Then the other part of your brain, which is a little bit of higher level cognitive thought, says, yeah, but that's okay. He's like way over there and he's behind bars and there's no way he can get to us. So we're literally in no danger. And then the part of your brain that's worried about fear says, oh, yeah, those are good points. That's true. I should calm down. Then the other part of your brain goes, yeah, and remember, we're at the zoo and we've been here before and it's totally safe. And look at all these other people. They've been safe. People have been coming in and out of here. Like, this is a safe memory. We're okay here. And then the part of your brain that worries about fear says, you know what? You guys are making great points here. We're going to chill out. And the fear goes away. All PTSD, one of those three guys in your brain doesn't do its job. Yeah, it's like the movie Inside Out. It's exactly what it's like, right? You got all the different parts doing different things. One of those three guys doesn't do his job. Either the fear response is so great, right? Because two people, look at veterans, right? I mean, we deal with a lot of veterans. Unfortunately, they get a lot of PTSD. When you deal with it, they'll see the same thing. One person will get it, one person won't. Why? It depends upon how strong those three brain parts work. That's what I'm talking about. When we're measuring EEGs on brain, that's frequency. That's what we're measuring. So the stronger their frequency is, the higher their frequency is, the more dialed in they are. Basically, the more correct their frequency is, the stronger resilience they have against that stress blowing one of those parts out. So if we can use frequency-based nutrition to strengthen someone's frequency, it is going to be a lot harder. It's going to make them feel better for sure, but it also is going to make them more resistant to the stress that we're all under on an every single day basis and allow your brainwaves to keep moving forward. So we want to keep ourselves in those healthy brainwaves. Now, there's lots of things that don't let us do that. So I've talked about a lot, and I get a ton of questions about this. Electromagnetic fields, things that are man-made, right? So there's certain electromagnetic fields that come from the earth, that's natural. They create the frequencies of the earth that we are meant in nature to live with. And then there's man-made electromagnetic fields, cell phones, Wi-Fi's, 5G towers, radiation, microwaves, all those different types of things. They are a completely different type of electromagnetic field. Now, we are tuned. Think of our bodies like cell phones. In order for it to do all the cool things that we want a cell phone to do, we have to connect to some sort of network. We're either going to connect to the natural network or we're going to connect to this network that's man-made. Man-made EMFs. And again, it's hard to knock them because look what it's allowing us to do right now, right? We're allowed to be with, I don't know how many people in the chat, is a lot. Hundreds of people from all over the world are connecting in all different time zones, are able to hear me talk purely because we have this technology. But it comes at a cost because if we're constantly exposed to this man-made electromagnetic field, how it hurts human beings, and there's thousands of studies on this, how it hurts human beings is it causes our nervous system to go into fight or flight. Even if there's no stress in your world, even if your diet is perfectly pristine, if you get exposed to too much man-made electromagnetic fields, what will eventually happen is your nervous system will start to respond in a methodology that looks like fight or flight because those fields force our body into that kind of signal. It's a stressor on our nervous system, right? Just putting your cell phone up to your head, I showed those images at the conference, causes all of this reaction in the nervous system, right? So while it's a great technology, you've got to be super careful because the question is, how do we get so far off frequency? Understand that we are bombarded by abnormal frequency constantly. In this world, I will tell you this right now, if you're not doing things to protect your health or improve your health, and the way to do that is through frequency. If you're not doing things to balance and improve your frequency, you are going to get sick way before you want to. That goes for you. That goes for me. That goes for my kids, my wife, my entire family. If you're not putting energy and attention into this with the amount of frequencies that we're getting exposed with, you're going to get hurt. And yeah, get your aluminum foil out and make your tinfoil hat because the science is painfully clear on this. And if I got to be considered a nutball, but I'll live a long, happy, healthy life, and my kids will as well too, sign me up. Fit me for the hat. I'm all fit me for the hat. I'm all for it. But man-made EMFs are incredibly bad for you when it comes down to that. Again, we're going to be exposed. There's no real way of avoiding this, right? I took my kids out. We went for a hike and we were way the heck out there in the middle of nowhere. It was a beautiful day and we were all on the just enjoying our time together. And I looked up at this beautiful scenic view and there's power lines over. And I'm like, you really can't get that far off the grid where you're not going to get exposed to some of these different types of things, right? So it's just, the what we call the inverse square law, the distance you can get away from it. Now, there's simple stuff that you can do. When you charge your cell phone at night, don't do it right next to your head on your nightstand. The rule of thumb is 15 feet away. My phone is in my bathroom charging at night, right? I still have a cell phone, but it's away from me when it's charging, right? It's good because then when the alarm goes off, I actually physically have to get out of bed to go get it. Otherwise, I just lay there and think all morning until I get it's where I get all my fancy ideas about all the different things I'm going to try to do. But we don't want it to put our nervous system into that state of fight or flight or even freeze to a certain extent. The other thing to do is massively control your light environment, right? You want to control your light environment. I mean, there's tons of studies. When we have blue light, which is basically the indoor lights that are over me right now, blue light stimulates a cortisol response. If you don't know what cortisol is your stress hormone. It spikes when we're under stress. If you get exposed to too much blue light, it acts exactly like caffeine does. It acts exactly like anything that will release cortisol in your system, and you will create a stress response purely by getting exposed to blue light, especially at nighttime, when you're not going to get exposed to it. So you always want to make sure that you're protecting yourself around these ideas of electromagnetic fields. You want to make sure you're protecting your light environment. The concept of seeing someone who has a natural vitamin D level that's high, 60 to 80 on blood work, that has depression literally doesn't exist in medical lexicon. Somebody who has a vitamin D level that's that high, meaning they get that much sun. Now remember, the same type of sun that moves your vitamin D level up is going to be the same type of sun that is going to charge your serotonin. It's not possible to see. Think about movies. Right? When they want to show you that somebody's not feeling well, are they like super tan? No, they always look really fair and really drawn out and really strong. They look gaunt, right? They look really pale. And think about it, when they have this person who comes to this big epiphany, what's the scene, right? Their head's up, their arms are open, and what's shining on them? The sun. If they want to depict someone's healthy, they'll show you that they're getting sun and that they have a lot of color to their skin. And if they want to show you that they're not well, they'll be fairly fair, right? So all of these things you can do, but it's really difficult because you're going to get completely bombarded by this. So what you want to make sure of is that you're doing what you can to offset this. Again, this is not something like with our ancestors where they weren't exposed to all these things that you could just set it and forget it. Because right now, believe you me, we are in a mental health crisis, especially in the US, but pretty much all over the world. So what can you do when you're using frequency-based nutrition? Every single thing that you're putting into your body is helping you to insulate and strengthen your frequencies against all of these abnormal frequencies. That includes stress, right? Stress is an abnormal frequency to the human body, especially chronic stress. So you want to make sure that you're insulating against that. Now, on top of that, you're also getting the nutritional benefits of some of these things, right? When we talk about mushrooms, a forest uses mushrooms to create the microbiome for what the forest needs. So it creates the environment inside the body, in the forest, to create the perfect environment for the trees to grow, the animals to survive. It makes it a natural, healthy environment to be in. So when we're using frequency charged, like in the rides, you have these frequency charged mushrooms, you're not only increasing your frequency, but you're increasing your frequency in your microbiome. After this, when you have time, Google microbiome and depression. You'll be blown away by how many research studies link these two things together. Okay, you will be completely blown away. And no one's telling you this, right? Because we're still living in this chemical model of everything. But that one product will take you so far, just increasing frequency. And everyone I talk to at the conference is talking to me about like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how much better I feel. I can't. Why? Why? It's not just one thing, because you're combining the best of both worlds when you're bringing frequency in with nutrition, especially the nutrition that you've chosen. So that's just the rise. Making sure you're able to get your body down to sleep at night. Aside from serotonin, there's 4 major neurotransmitters in your brain. 3 of them are excitatory. 1 of them is inhibitory, means it calms you down. But that's what you find in the sink. You find neurotransmitters that are designed to calm your nervous system down. Now, we're always go. Even the way the human body is designed for this, right? The human body, we have 4 neurotransmitters. 3 of them are designed to speed us up. Only 1 is designed to calm us down. So that's the whole ideology of when we're using these products. Again, with the frequency and nutrition infused into it, you're able to pick yourself up when you need it. You're able to calm yourself down. These chemicals don't work well in your body when they're in acidic environments. Acidic environments are toxic environments in order for these chemicals to work. Again, you could have normal levels of these hormones in your system, but if they're in an acidic environment, they're not going to work correctly. So when you're using the balance, minerals are massively important, number one, but just to keep your body alkalized is such a simple, powerful way. I use the analogy for patients of like, look, this is like cleaning your fish tank, right? When you get fish tanks, you definitely start using you check the pH, you check all the different chemicals in your fish tank, right? If you don't have it chemically balanced, the fish are going to go straight up and down, right? They're going to go up on belly up. It's the same thing inside of our body. What we're checking in the fish tank is the same way that our environment wants to be, right? So you're using these things to help balance. You're using it to help alkalize. Now, again, mineral balances can get really super important because lots of different types of problems have origin in different different mineral imbalances. Again, we talk about chemical imbalances, but mineral imbalances, the more severe a diagnosis mentally somebody gets, the more mineral imbalances you will typically see in their system. So we want to make sure we keep that as balanced as we possibly can be, because again, the more balanced you are, the more insulated you are against stressors, whether that's in frequency, whether that's in emotion, whatever that may look like. Now, it's actually very funny because I see a lot of the comments coming and talking about light and sun. So interestingly, again, my family's Italian, DeMartino's Italian, and my grandmother always used to say, well, we're not going to go out tonight. It's a full moon out there. And I always just thought that was like Italian superstition that, with all the, that people went crazy when the full moon came out. But it's completely not, right? The full moon reflects more blue light at night. And people whose frequency are not dialed in will take that blue light and it will make them have a stress reaction and they will do weird things. That's where the term lunatic comes from in the English language. Luna means sun. Luna means moon, excuse me. Luna means moon. So moon light that's aberrant when the moon is full like that will cause people to act like lunatics. That's actually where the English breakdown of the language comes from. So I saw a lot of people in the chat talking about that. That's cool that you guys all know that. I'm very impressed. But different things, solar storms, right? That's something we can't control, but they throw off the frequency of the earth. If you're not doing things to strengthen your frequency. Now in my clinic, we have all kinds of frequency-based machines, right? That's where a little way more complicated. On the day-to-day basis, this is something that should be in your routine in order to be able to work with this. Because if you can keep that strong, you keep yourself away from me, which is really ultimately where I hate to say it, but it's ultimately where you want to be. Because if you can keep yourself healthy, you keep yourself away from illness, right? You're either health exists on a timeline that's always constantly in motion, and you're either moving one way or the other. You're either moving towards disease or you're moving towards health. You want to be making sure you're taking steps for you and your family and your loved ones to move towards the good side of right? Move towards health. And it starts a lot of times with mental health. And that's really where we want to make sure that we're able to do things in today's world, right? When I think about how I do it, I do so much work to try to unravel all of these frequency patterns that are incorrect in people's bodies. Do you know how lucky you all are sitting here right now that something exists that you can take in your home that's working towards this, right? That's that readily available that will work or something like this. I mean, this makes huge differences for what's going to go on because I mean that was never even available, right? Again, you're in a category of one-to-one, which is a great place to be from a business side and perspectives, but I mean, you can really start changing healthcare in a pretty significant way, but it has to go through frequency because at the end of the day, we are frequency-based beings. As human beings, we are based in the idea of frequency, right? Our bodies operate through physics. Physics causes a chemical reaction. That chemical reaction activates on our biology. If we have no connection to physics and frequency, we will have an unhealthy existence. We will have unhealthy biology. It will create chemical imbalance. It goes back to what I said at the beginning. Chemicals only imbalance when the frequencies that govern them are incorrect. And 3 simple products right then and there can literally take you miles ahead of where the average person would have no idea about frequency or anything that we're talking about when it comes to any of these items, right? This is natural, right? Sunlight's natural, Earth's electromagnetic fields. This concept of frequency has been talked about for a very, very long time, but it has been lost when we got into the chemical model of treating and identifying diseases. When we look at blood work, what are we looking for? We're looking for a chemical expression of what disease is happening, right? We're not looking for answers of how do you fix that. We're just saying, hey, look, this is what went wrong chemically. All of those things are based off of frequency, and somehow we've lost that through the process of all of these things. So what I want to talk to you guys a little bit about a few other things is not only do you have the power of all the products, but you also have the power of each other, right? In community and group. Because, you know, when they talk about, you'll hear people talk about the circle of 6, right? Your life is going to look at like the 6 people who are the closest to you, right? And you look at where your 6 people who are closest to you, where that's going to be, you know, your life is going to look a lot like theirs. So sometimes that comes with some hard decisions. You have to look around and see who you're surrounded with because that's going to be that. And there's a frequency to that as well, too, right? Sometimes you evolve and people who we were close to aren't ready to evolve to that level and your frequency is too high and it doesn't connect anymore. That happens, right? It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's evolution and it's growth. And as great as the internet is and that we can talk and have these conversations all over the world at this point, it does also tend to isolate us, right? Because it's really easy to fall back into these patterns where we're completely isolated. I'm not going to go out. I'll just have this stuff ordered and sent to my house. Or my staff always laughs at me, right? We go get lunch, like go through the drive-through. Nope. I'm going to park my car. I'm going to walk through that sun, and I'm going to go into the room, and I'm going to go into there, and I'm going to talk to people. I'm going to say hello, right? They always laugh at me, like when I go to the same places. They always say I'm like Norm from Cheers. Every time I walk in, everyone's like, Dr. Rob, Dr. Rob. It's because I always go in there. I make a point to know everyone's name. I say hello to everyone. It is that connection, right? And you need that connection. I want to tell you, there was a study that they did on mice, and they put a single solitary mouse in a cage with nothing else in the cage at all, nothing to keep them interested, nothing else. But they put 2 water bottles in the cage. One of the water bottles was normal water. The other water bottle was filled with water that was filled with cocaine. So it was cocaine-laced water. And the mouse by themselves drank both types of water and then went only to the cocaine water and just exclusively drank the cocaine water. Then they did the study again. And they put a bunch of mice in a cage. And they put cool wheels and stuff for them to play with, and wheels that hamster wheels that they could run around in and do everything else like that. And they put the 2 same bottles of water in there, the one laced with cocaine and one with just regular water. All the mice go and drink the regular water. None of them touch the cocaine water. None of them. Why? Because there's things that are filling their dopamine. There's other things that bring them joy. There's other things that bring them happiness. They're not looking for that. all addiction leads into the road of low dopamine, right? Think about it. When your dopamine, which is a chemical like serotonin, different, dopamine makes you focus. So funny story, years ago, I was at a conference and I noticed a guy sitting at the bar. And I was like, I think I know that guy. And I was having dinner and I went over to talk to him. And it was John Gray. Now, John Gray wrote the book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. I recognized him from just seeing him around. And I asked him if I could sit with him and chat. We had this big, long conversation. We talked about science, we talked about neurotransmitters. And it's interesting because women will deplete their serotonin way faster than they deplete their dopamine. Now, dopamine keeps you on tasks. It's important for multitasking. It makes you solve problems. Serotonin is the hormone that makes you feel good. So women deplete their serotonin faster than they deplete their dopamine. Men are the opposite. Men will deplete their dopamine very quickly, but their serotonin tends to stay high. So at night, when my wife tells me she's going to go to bed, and then I look at her like an hour later and I see her running around and she's doing laundry and I said, what are you doing? I thought you were going to bed. She's, well, I'm just finishing up. But she's super stressed out. It's because her dopamine is still high and she's still task moding, but her serotonin is very low. And I say, did you get enough sun today? No, okay, whatever. Now, other side, I come home after trying to solve problems all day in my practice, right? I'm trying to solve every single person's problem. My dopamine is shot by the time I leave, right? By the time I'm done with this, I basically go home. I plop down on the couch. My kids are thankfully excited to see me. They all run and jump on top of me. And my wife is very excited to see me. And she has this laundry list of things for me to do. And she wants to have these big, long adult conversations with me. And I am super happy and feel great to just sit there and do nothing and have my play with my kids because I have to wait for my dopamine to refill before. And I'll tell her, like, I will do all of this stuff. Just you got to give me a second to rebuild my dopamine. And this has saved a lot of marriages through my practices, telling people this, like, hey, you have to understand where people come. But that's what all of this, like, they want to go to the technology because it's a quick dopamine hit, right? Hey, I made that post. Did somebody like it? Oh, cool. That's a quick dopamine hit. People are looking for that dopamine, but they don't realize that they get dopamine through frequency. They don't realize that they're trying to do that, right? Now, sometimes people try to do that with substances and drugs and things like that because they're trying to increase their dopamine, but it's the same thing that we ultimately do with tech addiction. We're trying rapidly to increase our dopamine, but we don't really understand that we get that from frequency and we get that with connection. So when you run through your dopamine levels too quickly, people who are very creative, artists typically, creativity exists when dopamine is degraded. So the more your dopamine gets degraded, the more creative you get. But then when you look at people who are artists or musicians, we always blame it on lifestyle, but it's really a lifestyle of their frequency choices because as that degrades their dopamine, yes, they get more creative and they get better at their art. But then cases of things like suicide, drug addictions, all of those things that happen come from that low dopamine state that they live in that low frequency. Now, they can still have the creativity, but they have to do it by protecting their frequency. But that's why you see that pattern so many times and times and times again. So you want to look at your circle of six. You want to look at everything else. And I'll tell you, I don't know if this was just luck or whatever, but when I was in college, I had a degree in natural sciences. That's what I majored in when I was an undergrad. And then I also had a degree in psychology just because I thought it was cool. And I just was like, well, I might as well take a minor in psychology and see kind of where that leads me. But I thought one of the interesting things is you also have to remember too, the concept of anxiety, which a lot of people live underneath, right, is an ego-based thing. Anxiety is based purely off of ego with this idea of, well, who I think I am or who I think I should be. That's where anxiety is, right? So, or who social media says I should be. And that's one of the really powerful things about having community like that is where you don't have to hold yourself to any standard. You have to understand that this is a path of getting where you need to get. Right. And raising your frequency brings these other people. Dave was talking at the beginning about serendipity, and I couldn't agree more because I always will tell you when my frequency is right, the things that I need to know will come to me. The other day, I had a patient ask me a question that I didn't know the answer to. And I said, you know what? I'm not sure the answer to that, but let me see if I can find it out. And it sent me into a research. And I found this research article that actually helped me solve a problem that I've been trying to solve for months. Now, if they never asked me that question, it would have never happened. And I'm laughing to myself going, they brought me exactly what I needed. I asked, and as long as I keep my mind quiet and I let my intuition do what it needs to do, eventually the answer will come to me. That ability to be moving around a lot and still be still. I don't mean not moving. I mean your brain being still. To be able to have the frequency to be able to do that is where the great things in your life start to happen. So this is something I do with my kids all the time. The idea of anxiety comes down to two basic ideas. Obviously, you've got the frequency and charge nutrition, but I always like to try to give things that people can do, right? Right. What can I do outside of this? Because it's not lost on me that after I talk, I usually create more questions than I answer. I answer a lot of questions, but then I create more questions. And that's great. Get them to these guys, and I'll make sure I answer them all for you. But when you talk about anxiety, it comes down to basically two states. The states are in the present, I am not safe, or it's future paced, where it's I'm not going to be okay, or things are not going to be okay. Anxiety exists only in those two states. So if my kids come to me and they tell me I'm nervous about this, I'm nervous about school, right? My one son, unfortunately, he's academic like his dad, and he wants to get the best grades possible. I used to obsess over these best grades. Like I had to get a, if I got a 99 on a test once, and I argued with my teacher until she gave me 100. She's like, "What do you care? It's an A plus," but it's just my mentality, right? My little guy, unfortunately, gets a lot of that from me. So we're going through all of this, and I said, "Let me ask you a question. Are you safe?" "Yeah, I'm safe. I'm in no danger." "Okay, so then there's no reason to be anxious because you're in no danger. You are safe." The idea then is future pacing. So, well, what if it's not okay? Well, what's the worst possible thing that happens? If you fail this test, what's the worst possible thing that happens? Is mom going to pick you up from school? Yeah. Am I going to come home from work? Yeah. Is the house still going to be there? Yeah. Will there be food? Yeah. Am I still going to love you up on the couch? Are we going to watch, Receiver on Netflix tonight because we're halfway through the season, right? Are we going to do all those things? Yeah. Because I failed the test? Yes. Okay. So you are safe and nothing bad is going to happen. Now, lots of times when we deal with patients, they're not safe, and we try to help them get into a safe zone, right? So if you're not in a safe zone, but these are the two questions you ask yourself: Am I safe? And everything is not going to be okay. Because the reality of it is this: whether it's okay or not is maybe not in your control. As a younger person, a quick story about me. Everyone sees me and they think, oh, together. I was really sick as a kid. I had a ton of health issues as a child. And part of the reason I had it was because my parents had my older sister, and then they had me 7 years later after going through fertility treatments. And as it typically happens, and my parents were all stressed out because they couldn't have me and they wanted to have this huge amount of kids. And when they finally quit the fertility treatments and said, well, this is just not in the cards, of course, as it usually happens, then I show up. But 6 months after I'm born, my sister got really sick in what ended up turning out to be a 10-year battle with cancer. And she passed away when she was 17 and I was 10. And it completely destroyed my health. It fried my nervous system, right? So the idea of like a nervous breakdown, which again, I hate the term, it has a negative connotation to it, but it overloaded my little 10-year-old nervous system and I couldn't handle it. And I didn't realize till years later, after learning all the things that we're talking about now, that it wasn't that I wasn't safe, is that I knew things weren't going to be okay. I lived in that anxiety all the time of there's nothing I can do about this. And this is going to be the outcome of this. There's nothing I can do about this. And it destroyed my energy. I was always known as a low energy kid. I remember going out into the fields and playing with my friends, and my friend's uncle had taken us out there. And I'm sitting in the outfield while all my friends are playing. And my friend's uncle telling me, he's like, DeMartino, you are the weirdest kid I've ever met. I've never met such a low energy kid before. And I'm going, I don't know. This is just how I am. I thought everybody was like this. It wasn't until I got better and I got my health back. And again, a lot of it through the beginning ideologies. Again, I'm older now. The beginning ideologies, you're talking about the 70s here. The beginning ideologies of frequency with all this, that I got my health back. Then my calling card became I had unlimited energy. Right? I had my friends were like, oh my God, you never stop. You never stop. You go, you go, you go, you go. Yeah, because I got things right. I didn't realize how much that was zapping my frequency. And even though there was still nothing I could do about it, and she ultimately lost that battle at 17, then the next step for me was, okay, what can I do about this? It's not going to be okay. Can I do something to make it okay? No, I couldn't do anything to make it okay for them, but I chose this path in my life to make it okay for as many other patients as I could possibly make. Right? That's why I chose this. That's why I wanted to do this. That's why I was always a younger person. What do you want to do? this is what I want to do. Now, again, make no mistake about it. When I was younger, they just loaded me up with antidepressants. My parents didn't know any better. Not that they should have, right? The doctors were trying to help, but they just said, load them up with antidepressants. And I knew that wasn't the path innately. And I'm going to try to get myself where I need to go. I had one of those black and white composition notebooks, and I told the story. I had severe migraines, and I literally thought myself out of the process. But that's why I want to also try to impart some of these strategies that you can use right now. Am I safe? Is it going to be okay? If it's not, what can I possibly do about it? And if I can't do anything about it, then just go with it because it's out of your control. And losing control is a difficult thing. But I promise you, as I sit here in this chair and we come to the end of this, and I didn't get through like half my notes. That's my bad. But I always over prepare, and I always have way too much stuff. But at the end of the day, the products that you have sitting in front of you, right? The Rise, the Sync, the Balance, those three just by themselves have the potential to take your health further and the people that you introduce it to further than almost about any other thing around, right? So if your ego is saying, I'm not where I want to be, the gap between where I want to be is here and here, look at this as the opportunity of how do I get where I need to go? This could be really the powerful vehicle in order to do that. So I hope this was helpful. I hope this learned. I hope you learned something else. I hope you got some maybe a little bit of inspiration. I hope maybe you got some science understanding. I try to keep this stuff pretty simple, but I get excited and I get into too much depth. But I hope there's things that you can apply. I hope now you have a greater understanding of how you can protect yourself and your loved ones against, and your friends and your family against all of these different types of things that will go on. And of course, if any other, again, questions come up, get it through the Frequence crew. They will get it to us. Maybe we do another one of these. Maybe we film a video that's like a frequently asked question things. I don't know. I got a gajillion ideas. Dave and I are on the phone all the time talking about all the different ideas that we have. But thank you guys for taking your time to be here. It's never lost on me that you just took an hour of your life, and your time is your most valuable asset, to sit here with us and talk about these things. So I am incredibly humbled and grateful, and all of your message. I read all of them. I super appreciate all of the great will that you send my way and Kayla's way as well, too, because I can't do all of this stuff without her either. She's sitting here late at night after we're done with work, waiting for me to be done with all of this. So thank you guys so much. And with that, Dave, I'll turn it back over to you, buddy.
Rob, you are amazing. You are amazing. And I know you've probably heard that 1,000 times in your life, but I hope you read all the messages on the chat bar too, because you are an incredible human being and you are helping change people's lives. And I know you know that, but I'm sitting here taking a whole notebook full of notes. I have already heard you do this like twice. And I'm like, he never said it before. I'm like, it's amazing. But thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And yes, we'll definitely do this again. And for everybody listening, I just want you to think for a moment where Frequence is. We're getting ready to launch the company from February in Orlando. We haven't even launched yet. We're in a pre-launch phase, putting these products together by asking the right questions. Like, why do people feel this way? Like, our bodies the energetic debt is the most amazing thing on the planet. Like, that to me that's everything. I mean, our bodies are made of elements and minerals and water. And if we can keep it charged up and feeling good, then we feel good. And if we don't, we don't. So let's fix it. Like, keeping it so simple. We're asking those questions. And those are the kind of products that we're coming out with. And we have an amazing, amazing team. I am not even going to get into the notes. I mean, you're incredible. The people around you have to be absolutely blessed. But I hope you do get to go home tonight and just crash on your couch and just fall down for
That's
a
the next.
couple
That's
hours.
the next.
Yes, but for all you all that are watching, if you have not had a chance to yet try any of the products, the Frequence Rise, you need to get with Who Got You On here and say, hey, hook me up. Because our goal is to really help get this message that Dr. Rob is talking about to the mainstream in a very simple, loving way, not a hateful, oh my gosh, you have to this way. It's let's educate people in a super loving way and then let people decide for themselves. And on the way, we give them some really good products to help them along the way. And I'll tell you what, we have more products coming. And we are working with Dr. Rob, and we're working on some things that are very specifically recommended by him to help in all these areas. And we're working very hard on them. So Frequence is just beginning. I'm not even sure we can call it the beginning, but we have tens and tens and tens of thousands of people loving the products, feeling good, and that's what it's about. So, with that said, Dr. Rob, this was recorded. People are going to be replaying this like crazy. Thank you again. And for all of you watching, have a super, super night. Talk to you guys later. Thank you, Dr. Rob.
Take care, everybody.